I'm Beth, and these are my memories. To the complex and precious people who appear in them, thank you. I forgive you, and I'm sorry. You shaped me, and I carry you still. In remembering, I've come to see us all more clearly, not as villains or saints, but as humans doing the best we knew how. I must have forgotten. Until now. My mom's parents lived in Buck Creek, Indiana, a few blocks from the train tracks. Of course, everything in Buck Creek was a few blocks from the railroad tracks. Sneeze at Grandma's house, and the lady at the post office hollered,
"Bless you, honey,"
down the road. In fact, when I grew up and did an internet search, I discovered it was originally named Transitville. So it started out as just a post office and a rail line. Then, when I visited in later years to see my grandparents' old house, I was shocked by how small the little township was. No more than a couple hundred people ever lived there, probably quite a few less. But Grandma's house seemed to me like the Winchester Mystery House. Doors that led to porches and porches all over the perimeter of the house. Plenty of options to sneak out without anyone knowing you were gone. Not that there was anywhere to go. And to drive by it now, those porches are small and close together. The only thing mysterious about them was why there was a door at every face of a 5-room house. At Halloween, we kids would walk to the grain elevator with paper grocery bags and scoop up spilled feed corn to throw on our neighbors' porches as a prank. Ooh, hilarious. Midwestern kids, am I right? We'd stalk the night, flinging it by the handful on each front porch, giggling with a ridiculously delusional sense of secrecy. Every neighbor knew who had left the morning mystery. It was their neighbor kids wishing them a day of crunch and mischief. Since we only lived a few miles away, my sister and I got to spend the night at Grandma's house many times. In summer, the attic bedroom was a stifling convection oven with a fan that blew like it was trying to cool off a volcano. But in the winter, it was meat locker cold upstairs. Not only was it obviously not air-conditioned in the 1970s, but it was not heated either. The whole house kept from freezing over with one big fire-breathing appliance that sat in the corner of the living room. I have no idea what fueled it, but I know no one was allowed to touch it except Grandpa.
You kids don't need to be touching that.
I also know it had no impact on the December warmth of the attic bedroom. We dreaded the first climb into that bed, knowing the steely ice of the sheets on our skin would be agonizing for a few minutes. But then, after that, the multiple quilts that Grandma had made and piled on the bed like geological rock strata would gradually warm up, and eventually we would be so warm we wouldn't know the room was only 40 degrees. But lying in that bed, the one my mom and her siblings had slept in as children, under those quilts, some of which they had also huddled under, and like me, breathing their breath into the cave until the bedding rose to their body temperature, felt like the safest place in the world. And then would come the train. First, the distant rumble. Trains in the country sound different from trains in the city when you're in your car and waiting behind a crossbuck so you can get on your way. When you're in your car, it's, hurry up, I have somewhere to be. At least for some people. I don't think it was ever like that for me, because for me, the sound of a train is the sound of safety. The rumble, the slowish, fastish rumble that gets louder, lower, faster, the clacking of the cars that have one wheel that sounds different from the other three. Roll, 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 thack. Then its presence was officially announced via the mournful wail of that insistent horn. Hearing it meant it was nearing the crossing. Be careful, everyone, we're coming through. Take care, just wait a minute, it'll be safe again. Roll, 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 thack. Roll, 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 thack. Roll, 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 thack. It was the lullaby of Buck Creek. And every night, lying in Grandma's upstairs bedroom, I don't know what time that train came through. I don't know if it was the same train at the same time, or a different train or a different time, but once I heard it come through town, I knew it was okay to go to sleep because everything was all right. Still today, I'll stop to listen to the sound of a train. It's a peaceful sound to me. It's a calming sound. The sound of a train is the sound of home. Being a middle child gets a bad rap. We tend to be unseen, rudderless, to be too old and too young all at once. But there are benefits. Less visibility means less pressure, more freedom, and the lessons that can only come from being in the middle. Middle children are the understudies of family drama, always ready, if rarely cast, but we get the best view of all the chaos. One of the breads that sandwiched me was Judith, 4 years older and entrusted with my care when we were out of the house. From Judith, I learned to try things that might not have been sanctioned by the parental units. We tromped through the woods, investigating an old, dilapidated house everyone called the haunted house. No ghosts, not even monsters. Only its age and abandonment were enough to tag it as spooky. The floors had holes in them. The windows were all broken out. The door stood stuck half open. Wallpaper peeled in every room. The stairs to the second floor were missing some treads. This haunted house was more Addams Family and less Amityville horror. One time Dad caught wind of our exploring this abandoned place and hiked with us to see what it was all about. After that, we were told in no uncertain terms,
Now, I don't want you kids going into that old house anymore. It's not safe.
our bikes carried us everywhere. Mom thought we would be safe as long as we stayed in East Tipp Heights, but our road was very long and the cars flew past us as we rode our bikes into and out of each of the 3 cul-de-sacs. Making that trip by myself made me feel so grown up. It seemed like 100 miles, although it was probably less than 2. A few times we rode our bikes to Hershey Elementary School to climb on the playground equipment. A few other times we rode all the way out to Buck Creek, miles away along busy country roads with cars passing us at 80 miles per hour. I don't know how Judith knew the way. She always had a good sense of direction. Sometimes we would pack a lunch. One time we decided to run away and filled the wagon with objects. Toilet paper, a Chipmunks album, and whatever else we thought we might need living in the wilderness. We might have made it further if Mom had let us take snacks. She caught us in the driveway and said we weren't allowed to run away, so we turned around and went to the backyard. These were the days before cable television. Everyone had either rabbit ears or an outside antenna. We had the latter, a 4-legged climbing structure that allowed us to access the roof. In the summertime, we would take turns climbing up the antenna, then on top of our 1-story house and jumping off the roof into the backyard. It must have been 12 feet or so, but to us it was worthy of Evel Knievel. Pure adrenaline. Enough to break an ankle, but we never got hurt. But again, when Dad found out, he put a stop to that. He thought he was saving us, but by that point we had been suburban stunt double wannabes for a couple of summers. Judith also imbued me with her love of scary movies and TV shows. Every weekend, she and I would watch the original Star Trek and then Circle of Fear. This was a horror anthology series similar to the much later Tales from the Crypt. Mom wouldn't watch those shows. She couldn't stand the fright, but we didn't mind it. There's a phrase that goes, "It's a feature, not a bug." I got scared sometimes, but since Judith and I shared a room, if the monsters broke in, we'd go down together. Like the silly women in horror movies who always fell down and then wriggled on the ground watching the killer get closer and closer. I mean, we wouldn't be that dumb. The other bread that completed our sandwich was Tommy. He was everybody's darling, just the cutest, sweetest little guy. He had a big round face and the brownest eyes, always happy and smiling. I was 3 years older and loved him boundlessly. Mom would have me do little chores around the house when Tommy needed her attention. The one I most remember is her having me iron my dad's handkerchiefs. I have no idea whether handkerchiefs really needed to be ironed, but I got it down. Iron it flat, fold it over, iron it again, fold it over again, and iron in the second crease. That was my job. Tommy wasn't super fussy, but he had to do exercises for hand-eye coordination, and Mom worked with him daily. There was a ball hanging from the middle of his bedroom ceiling, and he'd lie on the floor below it, trying to grab it as it swung past. I was jealous. Judith and I didn't get a ceiling ball. We only had an easy-bake oven that made cakes that tasted like chalk. Tommy was gentle from the start, the kind of kid who smiled with his whole face and lit up a room just by being in it. I mean, he was still my little brother, so I wasn't exactly nice to him all the time, but he moved through the world a little differently than I did, less hurried, softer, and not every kid understood that. Some said things that stung, but I knew better. I knew his joy, his sweetness, and the quiet way he made everything feel safe. I wanted to protect him, even when I didn't know how or have the words. From Judith, I learned to face my fears, to push through while my heart pounded, to know I had to get through it somehow, on my own. From Tommy, I learned how to care for someone who blossomed in gentleness. He taught me patience, protection, and the kind of love that doesn't ask for anything in return. Our relationships became more complicated over time. Judith and I weren't close after early childhood, but despite the widening distance between us, growing up with both of them shaped who I became. The combination of bravery and compassion that I learned from them was a prerequisite of adulthood, for memoir, for witness, for advocacy. Over the years, I've occasionally looked up the houses I grew up in. Of all of them, it's the East Tipp House that still calls to me. I don't think there's any great mystery. This was where my family was whole, and at least to my child eyes, we were happy. Recent photos online of that house show it's been lovingly updated by people who clearly adore the house. The kitchen is larger now. The peninsula with the stove, where Judith once convinced me to lay my palm on a still hot burner, is gone, and everything's been modernized. A corner of Tommy's bedroom has been reallocated to increase the size of the owner's bathroom and closet. Dad's old shop in the back of the garage has been remodeled into a family room off of the kitchen. Dad used to have a lathe in there. He turned big pieces of wood, but also big white plastic blocks that left mile-long strings of lathed plastic. The waste landed in a big box, and for some reason I found it fascinating. But every time I touched it, that stuff gave me nasty cuts on my hands. Judith used to catch salamanders and try to keep them in shoe boxes in the shop. When Dad would find them, he would set them free. Judith would cry. I don't know if she understood the cruelty of keeping a wild thing in a dark box. Nothing should have to live like that. Looking through the photos, I can still see exactly what that little house was to me. It felt big at the time, but 1,676 square feet is not a big house. Even with the renovations, it's still the same house to me. The wall where the record player sat next to the green-brown table, where I used to color and cut out dresses and blouses for the beautiful paper dolls my mom drew for us on cardstock. The sliding glass door that looked out at the cornfield where the sun set and sometimes cows meandered in the fall after the harvest. The narrow front hall where I have a photo of myself wearing a furry hat with huge white balls on strings. My room and its 2 high windows, once marked with red circle stickers to help firefighters know which rooms had children sleeping in them. Outside the front of the house looks basically the same. The red brick on all sides. The 2 front gables, one over Mom and Dad's room and one over the garage. The living room still has a big picture window flanked by green shutters on each side. In the back, I can see brick infill from the old garage door right next to the sliding glass door they've added in the new family room. The sidewalk Dad built is still there, aligned with the ghost of the garage door. I once walked on that sidewalk before the concrete had been placed and punctured my bare foot on a piece of wire reinforcing fabric.
Ow, Mom!
That fabric is why that sidewalk has lasted almost 60 years. I still remember the pain of wire against my skin. I still have a lump on my right heel from the scar I carry. My blood is a permanent part of its foundation. Proof that I was there. The shed Dad built is still there, now sided with vinyl. Judith and I used to set up
Haunted houses
inside of it for Halloween. She hung a sheet inside to create a path through, despite the shed only being about 10 feet square. The neighbor kids would be enticed to stick their hands through the sheet into bowls of cold, wormy spaghetti.
Ew, gross.
Yeah, come telling my mom.
The overhang out front of the shed is still there. I remember sitting under that little roof when Judith sprayed off insect repellent on the cookies she'd brought out for snacks. It's unclear if she was trying to keep bugs off of the cookies or poison me. I ate the cookies and lived to tell.
Hey, they're not even burnt.
No sense in wasting perfectly good cookies. The sandbox that Dad built is gone. I remember playing in it, sitting on the triangular seats at the corners. We had to be very careful. The stray cats thought it was for them.
Ew, I touched cat poop.
The people after us planted a row of evergreen trees along the old cornfield fence line. In summer now, they don't have as much view of the corn or the cows in the fall. The Rices lived on one side of us, the Bushes on the other. There were 2 kids at each house. Our neighborhood was always alive with kids and games.
I want to play statue maker.
No, tag.
In the summer, we'd stay out in the backyard way past dark, catching lightning bugs, cupping them in our hands, staring with awe until they flew off into the night to find a mate. I hope that yard is still full of monarch butterflies drawn to the milkweed that used to grow wild along the wire fence next to the cornfield. I hope it still gets a nightly show from hundreds of amorous fireflies. And may the lightning bugs all be lucky at love. I hope that family has cookouts over a huge bonfire like we used to do, roasting marshmallows on sticks we cut from our own trees and sharpened with Dad's pocket knife. And I hope they eat the charcoal husk filled with sweet goo after they've set the marshmallows on fire. I hope they sit by the red embers and talk in conspiratorial tones until it's time to sleep. I hope the family there is happy and healthy in the house that was once mine. I hope they always stay that way. Let it be a house that is overflowing with love. Thank you for listening. These are my memories, and maybe they echo yours too. I must have forgotten, but I remember now. Sound design for this episode includes excerpts from MuseHub and Pixabay. These audio textures help carry the memory, shape the emotional arc, and are honored with gratitude here.